I had had another telepathic exchange with the angel when we were flying over the ocean, and I had thought with my skeptical mind, is this real? And he answered in telepathy in me, but it was a very strong, resonant voice, and he said, more real than anything back there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel within. I am delighted to have with me today Louisa Peck, where we will discuss her NDE and then how life has changed after that. So, welcome, Louisa, and thank you for being with us here today.
Thanks, Mira. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy that people like you are creating channels. So I did have a near-death experience in 1982, and I'll talk about that a little, but I've told the whole journey of it on other YouTube things. And what is more interesting to me relative to your channel content is sort of my increasing gifts of picking up on the spirit world. When I first had my near-death experience, I'll just tell it very, very briefly, just to kind of lay the groundwork. So it was in 1982, before I'd ever heard of a near-death experience. It really wasn't in the popular culture yet. I was 22, and I was an alcoholic, and that runs in my family. And I also used drugs, but I also was a high achiever. That also runs in my family. So we kind of had to do both, so I went to college and I won a lot of awards, but I took some of my exams just so drunk I could hardly read the questions. But after I finished college, I moved to New York City because I wanted to major in being cool. I wanted to. And I wanted to go to all the nightclubs. That was my idea of being cool, was night clubbing and just being at, kind of hip scenes or whatever, going to parties. And so I basically, the way I would describe it is I was raised with very conditional love. Like if you could just do a little better, if I got an A minus, my dad would interrogate me, what went wrong here, and as a result, I was very insecure. And the drugs and alcohol gave me relief from being me, which was uncomfortable. So I asked a friend to come down to New York City. He brought a bunch of cocaine with him. We snorted it all at the nightclub and bought more at the nightclub because we were coming down, and what we bought didn't work. We put it on our gums and it numbed them, so we bought it, but then once we snorted it, he said, this is not cocaine, we've been had. He said, it's baby powder or something, but I said, well, it numbed our gums, so I snorted the whole pile. Now, I've been sober 30 years now, but I met drug dealers in AA who told me that back in the 80s, they used to cut cocaine with lidocaine because it has a numbing influence, but it's just anesthetic. So if you snort a big pile of anesthetic, it's going to shut down all your nerves. And that's what it did. So it was slowing my heart and eventually stopped my heart right there in the nightclub. I had a grand mal seizure and cardiac arrest and would not respond to CPR for 3 minutes. So my experience was that it felt like someone punched me under the chin so that I flew up in the air. That's what I thought. I didn't think I was flying out of my body. I just thought I was flying up in the air, and it just felt so wonderful. And I had a sense of Manhattan kind of receding away down into the left. And my thought was, thank goodness that's over with. And what I meant by that's over with is being Louisa, because it just wasn't working out. So it's kind of like if you were knitting something and it turned into a whole bunch of knots and you just said, well, never mind about that. That's how I felt about my life. But I went through many mediums. I went up into the sky. I plunged down into the ocean. I walked to the land. I saw an old house. And when I got to that house, I realized it was the house of my ancestors and that it was a way station of sorts. That I just knew this intuitively. No one told me this. I didn't have a body by that point either. I was just a little point of awareness that far from the floor. But I could sense all of my relatives so excited for me to join them. And the one I felt most strongly was one of the, I never met either of my grandfathers, but one actually died even before I was born, my father's father. And he was the one I could feel most eager to see me. And all I had seen of him was, my mom didn't like my dad to have pictures of his family out, so they were in his closet on the shelf, you know. But every time I'd go in my dad's closet to play with his shoes or whatever I used to do, I would see that and go, wow, that's my grandfather, weird. And so he's the one that that was most excited. Anyway, there was an open window, big picture window, I mean, and there was supposed to be a chair in front of it where I knew all my ancestors had sat to just soak in the beautiful view of the ocean. And it wasn't there. And so I felt I'd been gypped. And I thought, where's the chair? You know, I want to see. And as soon as I thought I want to see, then something grabbed me by, I didn't have a body, but where my sternum, you know where your sternum is, even if you close your eyes, it was from that area, pulled me across the wooden floor, and then we went up over the windowsill. And I was like, I remember feeling like, this is so fun, this is so cool. That was the only thing I thought. I didn't know how it was happening, but it was fun. And then we went over the windowsill, and then we flew over the ocean, and the sun was right in front of me, making a golden path that came across the water, and I was zooming over that. And just to jump ahead to a little bit of what I know about near-death experiences now, having been going to IONS for like 13 years now, and I've interviewed maybe 100 near-death experiencers, is that there's a raising of vibration, of frequency, of something like that occurs as we kind of ascend. It's not really ascending, but as we shift to the spirit world. And the reason the zooming over the ocean felt so amazing, all this sense of forward motion, was that my frequency was increasing. And the sun at the same time was getting bigger and bigger. And I had the thought, am I going to vaporize? Because I'm getting awfully close. And then I just kind of passed through this filament. I had a feeling of passing through the filament. And then the whole ocean thing was gone, and I was inside the sun. And in the sun was the light. And the light was that overwhelming feeling of love. It is just love, love, love to capacity, beyond capacity, that it's just not comparable to anything on earth, because it's in every bit of your being, every bit of your consciousness is saturated with love. And my first thought was like, this is so warm, it feels so good. And then I realized it was love. And my thought was, finally, because I'd kind of been tap dancing my whole 22 years trying to feel approval. And now I had everything. So I felt there was a being holding me who was pouring love into me. That guy's now my angel. I talk to him regularly, but at the time I just thought of him as the parent, because I couldn't see him, but I could sense that he was kind of holding me like I was a baby and pouring love into me. And then I wanted to stay there forever, but all of a sudden he said, you can't stay, you're not done yet. And then it just went to black. And really just simultaneous with him saying that. And I felt myself falling, which was very scary. But that only lasted a bit. And then I eventually came to in my body. My body felt very strange to me. I was here. And anything further down, like you want me to move my mouth, that is a long way away. Let me see if I can make that. I said, I'm back in the meat puppet. I was so disappointed to be back. It was incredibly bummed to be back. I had another telepathic exchange with the angel when we were flying over the ocean, and I had thought with my skeptical mind, is this real? And he answered in telepathy in me, but it was a very strong, resonant voice, and he said, more real than anything back there. So I came to on the floor of the nightclub. I had sweated a whole bunch, but I really don't know how God or Ignacio, as I call him now, my angel, had gotten all of that lidocaine out of my system because I had a lethal dose, and people die from using too much. People will kill themselves by taking lidocaine ointment, which is like 5% lidocaine, and mine, I think, was much more than that. I don't know, I'll never know. But I never thanked the bartender who did the CPR for 3 minutes. He came up to me when we were waiting for the ambulance outside, and he said, you know, we kind of thought you weren't coming back. You were gone a long time. And my friend had actually told him to cover me up because I was, you know, blue or gray, and he didn't want to look at that, and didn't seem the CPR was going to work. But I was too cool to thank him beyond just kind of going, yeah, thanks. I was smoking my cigarette. I figured out that the ambulance we were waiting for was for me, and I thought of my parents, and I thought they would just be so angry with me. And if they heard I killed myself, I don't know what they would do, bring me back from New York City. I just didn't know what the consequences would be. So I said, I'm not going. And my friend was a math teacher at a private school up in Connecticut, so he didn't want to go either. And so I went home. And so we were talking before we started the recording, and you were saying, you know, that you're so grateful to people who had NDEs and who come back and tell the world. That was not me for so long. That was not me for so long. I just thought this is a crazy hallucination, because here's the thing, this might seem odd, but I had never heard of a near-death experience, and I knew I had gone to the other side. I had that, I think I went to the other side. I had that word, but the only thing I had associated with it was religion, and really specifically Christianity. My father was a very, very staunch atheist. He had raised me to be very much what I like to call a foaming at the mouth atheist. I just thought anybody who believed in religion, who believed in ghosts or angels or anything like that was an idiot, just an idiot. And I had no other idea of spiritual matters than go to church, read the Bible. So I just rejected it. I just decided I'm not going to go to church. I'm not going to turn into some goody-goody. I like to party.
That's a really good point you bring up, Louisa. And in you talking to over 100 near-death experiences yourself, it does seem like there is hesitation and to process what actually happened. And it seems like reluctance, and it takes a while. Is that what you found in talking to others like yourself?
Yes, I don't know anybody who flat out rejected it, but I do have talked to people who shut it down and stopped talking about it because they met with skepticism from other people. But, you know, if you think of somebody said to you, well, you need to change your political party, you'd be like, no way, that's not me. So what if somebody, an experience says to you, actually your entire experience of consciousness and the universe and life and everything is wrong? You need to believe this whole other thing. In terms of my story, I rejected it absolutely. My near-death experience, I told it to people as though it had been a drug trip, and or not necessarily. I was kind of not sure with my, like, how I was going to explain it in terms of my brain. So I sort of wanted to believe that cocaine could be a hallucinogen. I still thought I had done cocaine at that point. But then I also thought, you know, if I was not breathing and without heartbeat for 3 minutes, then it could also be my brain shutting down from hypoxia. And so I said either one of those. And the reason the love in the light was so intense, I told myself, is that everything kind of shut down except for one little bunch of neurons at the center of my brain or whatever, which were the last things to go out were love. And so it seemed really big. So I was like, yeah, that's my explanation, and I'm going with it. And I did get very depressed afterwards, which is also a very common thing. But the first weird thing that happened was seeing a ghost. This was several years later. So my near-death experience was 1982. This was 1985. I was walking on a beach in Gloucester very early in the morning, very frustrated about a romantic prospect that wasn't working out, although I was married. I'm walking down the beach and there's a big storm, and Gloucester is a place where a lot of fishing ships went down. They have a big monument in the center of town with the names of, like, I don't know, several hundred fishermen who drowned. And I didn't know that, but I was walking along and I saw this guy come out of the dunes, but he came out of the dunes not in an area where there were any houses, just, I thought, was he bird watching? I'm looking for like binoculars, like what could he have been doing there? And in the middle of a storm, how is that going to happen? But I saw he had on old fashioned Macintosh. He looked like the fish sticks guys. He had on the yellow hat and the yellow jacket and the black boots, but I could also tell from the way that the material moved, it wasn't nylon, it was Macintosh, which is they sprayed rubber onto cloth. And so I was all excited to ask him where he got it, because it was the time of Madonna and I was really into vintage. But when I got closer, I could see he was very upset about something, and he was staring at the horizon with this really upset look. So I'm looking at him, there is no horizon. It's a storm, you can't see. And the rain's coming down like crazy on us, and he's just looking. And so all I said to him was, "How's it going?" and crossed behind him. And he moved his eye a little bit, but that was it. And then I thought, what a jerk. We're the only two people out here on this beach in this crazy storm at 7 a.m, and he can't even say hi. And I turned around and he wasn't there. So my mind scrambled for explanations, and eventually I went back and saw that mine were the only tracks. And that was so upsetting to me. It was just a breaking the laws of object permanence, which are some of the first ones we learned as an infant. And I was angry. I went back to the house where I had been staying. It was a kind of party house, and everybody thought that was so cool that I'd seen a ghost except me. But here's what's going on is, we talk about going up to heaven or, down to hell. And really, I do feel that the spirit world is around us all the time. And it's just a matter of whether we can tune in. After you've had a near-death experience, I think that we each are kind of encased in some kind of, I like to call it a God-phobic sheath. But what it is just like each cell needs to have a hydrophobic sheath around it. The membrane is hydrophobic so that it can be a distinct cell and operate on its own. We have this God-phobic cell so that we can think and decide things. And as you said, God's kind of doing this hide and seek with this game. Like, will you figure out that love and goodness and kindness are what it's all about, or will you not? And so we have to have free will and have sort of privacy from the spirit world to do that. But once you've had a near-death experience or 2 or 3, it gets thinner. For me, the more I've raised my vibration, the more I have become kind and loving to the best of my ability. We don't think it's weird that how many TV shows are going on right now? Some of them are broadcast in the air and you can pick them up, whatever. How many phone conversations are going on right now? And, I live out in a rural area now, but when I lived in Seattle, there were beams of conversation shows, Wi-Fi going everywhere, but you're not hearing it. And so the spirit world is around us all the time, but we have to kind of tune into it. So one story I tell is, also I've told it on several videos, is that I was, this is going to be 10 years after my near-death experience. I drove home from a party extremely drunk. I couldn't even stand up. People had taken away my keys. They had taken me to a house. They had said, "Sleep here, you have no business driving home," because I lived quite far away in a log cabin on windy roads. Anyway, as soon as they were gone, I got my keys. I got in my car. I couldn't even stand. I couldn't even find the ignition. And I drove home so drunk. And there was a place where the road narrowed to go over railroad tracks. And I saw so many reflectors. I was seeing double, more than double, just a blur of them. But I didn't want to live anymore at that point. So I just thought, I just don't care. Music is cranking. I'm smoking my cigarettes. I'm just an idiot. Anyway, I went, shot for the middle, got across, got home, no thought of what I could have done to other people, no thought of that. I did feel like if I died, my parents would be okay because they had 3 other children, which is just, I was really messed up at that point in my life. And so I got out of my car and it was a starry night, and that same voice, the one that had said, more real than anything back there, the one that had said, you can't stay, you're not done yet. It kind of shot through me. It felt like it came from the stars. It did feel like it came from above. It came and it shot through me sort of like lightning into the ground. And it said so clearly, so like, just like that's all I could think or hear. It was said, this is the last time I'm going to help you. And you do know right from wrong. And I remember that so clearly, although from that point on, I was blackout drunk. So as soon as he sort of dropped me, after he'd gotten me across the bridge and got me home, I'm back just to brain only, and I have no memory. But that memory is so clear, and going across the bridge is so clear because he was with me. And somebody pointed out, he has saved my life 2 times that I know of since then, many times actually. So he didn't really mean, I'm never going to help you again. What he meant was, you have free will. And if you are so determined to destroy yourself, I'm done saving you. And that's what you have to do with any alcoholic. You can't keep helping them, or they never hit bottom. And in this case, though, I had a lot of trouble getting wasted with those words, you do know right from wrong, in my mind. And so took me a month before I went to my first AA meeting. And that was on January 29th, 1995. And I'm coming up on 31 years, which is kind of crazy. So
Congrats on that big milestone.
thank you. Thank you. I love being sober, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was just at a meeting earlier today, and I just love them. But anyway, you were asking how I raised my vibration. And it's really been kind of teamwork between Ignacio's coaching me, which he does regularly. He tells me things I don't want to hear. I can give you some examples. And then what I learned in AA, because the 12 steps are kind of a distilled wisdom of every tradition, basically, about how to become less ego-driven and more attuned to loving kindness and service to others, and how that makes us thrive. I could never have not drunk without changing, though it happened very, very slowly. So one lesson here is, I can show you these pictures. Let me take them out of the graphene so they show a little better. When I was turning 18 years sober, I had a big party to celebrate my birthday, but then I found out that I had breast cancer. And I had just had the appointment. I hadn't even thought about taking down the party off of Facebook or I hadn't thought of anything once I got the diagnosis of breast cancer. But then I got the what do you call it? I don't know, met with the doctor, and he said it was small enough that they could just do a lumpectomy. And so I changed my party to 18 years sober and get to keep my boob party. So that was in 2013, January 2013. And so a ton of friends came, just a ton of friends, and they made such a fuss over me. Big mural on the wall, like Louisa will beat cancer, and everybody drew little pictures, and my house was crammed, and they had brought food and they had brought a cake. And so they were singing happy birthday. And this was around the time that my addiction memoir had come out. This is my addiction memoir, and it only talks about 14 weird things, because I really wrote it before I understood near-death experiences. But I was thinking, oh, my siblings were right, I'm just such a narcissist, and all the terrible things they say about me are true. Why do I make myself the center of attention? So here comes Ignacio, right? And he shows up, and he's always on my left, and he says, so basically he says, don't be silly. This is the whole point of life. Just let them love you. So again, he's like this. I'm having all the self-hate thoughts, and he comes in with this. It's the whole point of life. Just let them love you. So somebody had my camera, took a picture of me, and somebody else took a picture a second later and posted it on Facebook. So here's the one taken with my camera. So he's to my left.
Wow.
There
Yeah.
he is, and he's telling me. So the pink thing is my ponytail holder, but he has these kind of craters within craters. I don't know. So the one that was on Facebook is not as clear because she had taken it off her camera, but you can see he has moved and he has rotated a little bit, and the features that are in him, whatever they are, craters or dark spots or sphere within sphere, are still there. So that's when he said, change me again. Let me know that it's important not only to give, because I had helped all of these people. Some of them had been really messed up when I took them on as sponsees. Others had, just been freaking out. I need to get to a mental health place, and I don't have a car, and I pick them up and drive them, even though, they called me when I was shopping in Safeway with my slippers on. I just went and did things for these people, and they wanted to give back. And you have to let people love you. So this reminds me, this is another thing, this is in plastic, but it doesn't really matter. This is my list of weird things. So there were 14 weird things, but then they kept happening. So I had to write them in. So the first book is that, and then my next book is called Die Hard Atheist, From NDE Denier to Full-On Woo-Woo Against My Will. So I am a full-on woo-woo now, and it's against my will. So
Tell us some of your favorite ones.
Well, one that might be significant for you since you've lost your mom recently, and it kind of relates to the hospice nurse's experience, is that my older sister had breast cancer very young, and she was 41 when it had come back. And I was in her hospital room in Virginia, and so was my brother. We were kind of watching through the night. They had told us she had 2 weeks to live. But as I'm sitting there and kind of dozing in this, those god-awful vinyl chairs they have in hospitals, I began to see, not with my eyes, but either you can call it your heart's eye or your mind's eye, I began to see the light, but it was coming in through the hospital window, which was closed, which had no way to open, coming in through the bottom of it, traveling, then dropping lower to the floor, then going up over my sister and swirling. And I would see it and I'd be like, what? And I'd open my eyes, there's nothing there, so I'd close them. At the same time, Ignacio, my angel, starts saying to me, she's afraid, you have to tell her about the light. Tell her about the light. Tell her you can help her. Tell her about the light. And this was in 1997. So, it was 15 years after my experience, but I hadn't been talking about it. I just thought, so the only weird things that had happened to that point was that ghost, and then knowing that my nephew was going to die as an infant. And I had shut those away. Like, I'm not going to think about that or the near-death experience. So I knew the voice was the same voice. And he can show me, one of the things that your angels can do is like replay memories for you that are apt, that pop it into your mind. So he popped into my mind that my sister had told me, my younger sister had told me that the sister who was dying had said, dying at 41 of cancer is the biggest disc God can give you. And she had told me on the phone like a month before, he replayed this for me too, when I'm on morphine, people think I'm asleep, but I hear every word. So when he's saying, help her cross, tell her about the light, I kind of put together that she was experiencing God as being mean to her. She had been bullied a lot in her childhood, and she was experiencing God as a bully. She was a Catholic, and her religion meant a lot to her. So I went over and I knelt by her bed and I spoke into her ear and I just described the light, but I described it in terms of Jesus because that was her belief. The sun had been my symbol of God because my father had taught me all life comes from the sun. And her symbol I knew would be Jesus. So I said, Jesus will be with you and you'll be enfolded in his love. You'll be so warm. You'll be so loved. You'll feel so wonderful. And I told her she had done beautifully in this life. And I just listed, your beautiful music, your amazing scholarship, your children. You've done a wonderful job, but your body doesn't work. And Jesus wants to bring you home. So then, and these words were coming to me sort of not from my mind, but they were Ignacio telling me what to say, and then I was suddenly out of words. He's like, that'll do it. And it was like something had kind of ignited, a little something. And the light that was spiraling over her, the image of a galaxy, I understood was all our ancestors, millions of ancestors connected, amping up to bring her home. But she had to open and be willing for them to take her. If you're not willing, you won't go, unless in my case, I had no choice. He kind of like shot me out of an ejector seat or something. But so 20 minutes later, she hemorrhaged and she died. I forgot all about the light. I just ran around so terrified because blood had come out her nose. And it's like nothing I'd ever seen. You could see her pulse in it. And so we were yelling, it's 5 a.m, help us, the nurse's station is empty. And finally we get a nurse and she goes and gets a doctor, and the doctor put a stethoscope on my sister and then said, her heart is still beating, said this very cheerfully, her heart is still beating, but it will run out of oxygen, or it'll stop when it runs out of oxygen. And I became so frustrated that I wanted to just grab that little doctor and like throttle her. Why aren't you saving my sister? But then my sister suddenly flooded me with the light. She just filled me up with it. And I could feel her love. You can recognize people's love. There's a certain feeling of being loved by that individual that you know so well, especially in your family. And I could feel her loving me. I could feel her loving my brother, but I could also feel her loving the nurse who got her name wrong and the little doctor. She was just filling us all with love. And she was telling me, I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. This is amazing. And she filled me with the light. And I remember thinking, it's in every cell. How did she do that? And then she told me, I have something important. You need to go to my youngest son and tell him what I will tell you, because nobody's going to explain to him what's happened. So I did go back to her house. Everybody was keening and crying. I was joyful. I still had the light in me. She had given me a little splinter of her joy. And I was also amazed that I had obeyed the light. And at that point, I knew it's real. It's so weird, this back and forth kind of chameleon thing that I would do. Like when a miracle was happening like that, I would know that all of it was real. The near-death experience, the ghost, the knowing my nephew would die. I knew it was all real and connected. But then you get back in the mainstream society and everybody's mainstream belief that that's a bunch of junk, that's a bunch of like nonsense. And I would change color to a skeptic again. But at this point, I knew it was real. So I found her son. He was under the dining room table, just playing with a Star Wars toy, just kind of bending it. And it's a little stormtrooper. And I told him, your mama loved you so much. And all she ever wanted to do was stay here and be your mama. But she had to go to heaven because her body doesn't work. And like, I had never talked to children at that point. And I feel that the words were given to me by my sister and or Ignacio, both. I don't know what, but I knew exactly what to say to him. And then I said, do you understand? And he nodded his head. And then I said, can I give you a hug? And he said, no, because he was angry, and, but now he had a clear picture of what had happened, and he's doing very well now. He's very deeply religious himself now. He's God, what is he now, 32, 33? But when I first told my story at Seattle Ions, I had no contact with other near-death experiencers. It's just that by the time we got to this 14th weird thing here, it was so weird that I had finally, there was Google by then, Googled, I died and came back with weird reading minds. I don't know what I put, but anyway, I got directed to Seattle Ions, and then they were always happy to have a new person, and they said, can you tell your story? So I got to that part and I said I could feel my sister up near the ceiling, and then I just felt ridiculous. I just felt like, I can't believe I'm speaking these words in front of like 5,500 people. I don't know what it was. And then Kimberly Clark Sharp was sitting on a stool next to me, kind of, whatever which she does when somebody's brand new. And she said, wait. And then she said to the audience, how many people here have sensed someone hovering? And people raised their hands in the audience. And then she said, and how many people here have hovered near the ceiling? And hands went up. And I could hardly believe it. But I guess one of the other most beautiful experiences I'll just tell you about my father. So we have a summer cabin on Anderson Island, and it was very rustic. For years, we didn't even have electricity. My father loved it because it reminded him of growing up in the Depression and the Great Depression. So he was always fixing things there. He loved frugality. And in any case, I was out in the rain one time replacing the roof on the shed, and I could just feel him around me. I had on this raincoat, and I could hear the rain falling on it, and I had, the tar paper, the hammer, the nails, and I'm fixing this thing, and I felt him so clearly that he was like, yes, you're my daughter, you're doing my things. And so the next morning I meditated, and I just said, Dad, I want to talk to you. Are you there? I really want to talk to you. And I kept saying things like that, not connecting. And to me, it seemed like it took forever. I think it was probably like about 3 to 5 minutes, really. But then I just changed it a little bit, and I said, is there anything you want to tell me? And boom, here he was. But I was expecting, he died at 85, a very grumpy alcoholic, and I was expecting that guy. But it wasn't that guy. It was my fun-loving dad from when he was like maybe about 35 or 40, and I was like 5 years old, and we would play. It was that guy who I had forgotten what he was like, but the energy was so strong. He had this charisma that I had forgotten he used to have when he was happy. And so what he showed me in my mind's eye took me a second to identify, a crib. I realized it was the old crib that all of us children were in, because it had screens on it and a lid you could close. It had screens instead of bars, and it was white. And so in the image he gave me is approaching that crib, so you could see a little more of inside, a little more inside. I never actually saw the baby, but I knew there was a baby in there. And he said, all of you was there when you were a baby, and I loved that. And I didn't understand. And then I said, I don't know what you mean. And then he said, you didn't have to do anything. And so he meant, and he also told me that he was so honored that my life came through him. And it was that conditional love, that what is this A- jump through the hoop stuff. He was like, I gave you the wrong impression. I didn't share with you that I just loved you for being you. And, all of that stuff he did was trying to help me have a better life as he understood it, but he didn't ever mean to give me the message, which he felt he had, that I had to perform to earn his love. He loved the little baby, and that was me. And so then I'm sitting there, but part of me is aware I'm sitting at the kitchen table at the island cabin, and I just said, Dad, how do I know this is really you? And so then he showed me in the corner of the crib, I could see into the crib, and in the corner, there's this garish pink teddy bear. And then he's gone. Oh no, he wasn't gone yet. He said, "This is the first toy we got you, and you named him Aha." And then I remembered Aha was in fact my first teddy bear, but I had never seen him in memory, except he'd been through the washer like 50 times and he only had one eye, and like teddy bears get for children. This was what Aha looked like when they brought him home from the store. And so it was something he had seen that I hadn't seen, but I could connect, and then he was gone. And I was just amazed that so quick, like they don't have time, they don't have brains, they don't have, when I asked for something to prove it was him, he came up with something that he could know that I couldn't have known, but I could recognize that fast, right? So then I knew for sure it was him. And I've tried to carry that with me, that, I've had a baby since then. And I know I had had a baby by that time. Yeah. So I understand now the feeling of how much you love that baby.
Thank you for sharing those beautiful stories. I especially like the one with your dad that shows that love transcends everything. You mentioned that your psychic abilities or gifts seem to have expanded or grown since the NDE. Do you want to share anything else about that?
Well, I just think that if you look at the frequency of these, it's like 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, couple months, they're just, I have never intentionally done anything. When I did intentionally try to connect, I did, and so I've always been working, and I've been a single mom, and I've just said I don't have time to be a medium, but now I'm retired, so maybe I should, although you get I'm editing an NDE's book, and you get very busy when you're retired. So I don't know, but I just feel that I just often know what people are going to say before they say it, or going to call before they call, or all of those things that everybody has. Everybody has those, but mine are just happening more and more often.
If you have to give a message to someone who is on the edge of death, or who is caring for, or who has lost someone recently, what would you say to them, Louisa?
That it sucks that they're not here with us now. It sucks that their physical form and that easy connection and all of those things are gone. And it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to miss them, and it's okay to feel that pain, because, grief is the flip side of love. And there's just no way around that. However, it may give you some solace to know, that your loved one is wonderful. That my mom had always thought my woo-woo stuff was ridiculous, but I got a message from her, and she was just like, "I should have done this a long time ago." But she was so happy to be out of that 97-year-old body. They are having the time there. They are in heaven. They are having an amazing time. The other bit of solace is that you will be with them. So many of the near-death experiencers that I have interviewed, they did get to see, their mother or their grandmother or whoever it was that loved them who was deceased on the other side. And that your time will come when it's time. Now, there's not fate, but there's times when it's just not your time. When you have a good path in front of you to grow, and God wants you to grow like that, right? It's not time to I don't know, pick a flower when it's still just starting to open, right? And so you're going to go when it's your time, but they want you to come. They're ready to bring you, they can't wait to see you. Time is different though, time, so many near-death experiencers, they said, I thought of my children, I thought of my husband, and I knew I'd be seeing them in 5 minutes. So I wanted to stay, like not literally 5 minutes, but on the other side, they knew that their loved ones had a path, could follow that path, would be okay, and that they'd be reunited soon. So I would also tell people, just don't be afraid to ask for signs. Don't be afraid to ask for signs, and be specific about it. Like, it was interesting to me that when I tried to contact my dad, I didn't reach him until I made a space for him. You know, I said, is there anything you'd like to tell me? And I kind of opened a space for him. You know, if you watch Tyler Henry or somebody, he doodles and everything to kind of empty his mind to let them in. Other times when I have been in a very loving space, that's when I accidentally read minds a lot. When you raise your vibration, you can pick up more frequencies, and you do that by being loving and kind. And I also think it's good for you.
I have 3 questions that I ask everyone. What brings you joy and laughter these days, Louisa?
Being in a space where I can laugh at myself and loving that same kind of just kind of toddler within.
What would you say to little Louisa who is about to start this wonderful journey?
That God thing that you sensed in the sky that loved you, that time you were lying down on the grass and looking up through the tree, it's real. Because I did believe in God when I was very little. But then my parents and my culture and all of these things took that away from me.
Yes. And if you have one final message or blessing, what would that be for anyone listening?
Yeah. You know, the hardest thing to learn is how to love yourself. It is so easy to say and so hard to do. And any way that you can find, I talk out loud a lot. I talk to myself, and I talk to myself kindly now, you know, and catch yourself.
Thank you so much for being here with me today, Louisa. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in this area to help humanity.